Indiana, that's Indiana. Ballin' like Reggie Miller, that's Indiana. I put up on my state, that's Indiana. Watch me rep it in your face, that's Indiana. That's Indiana, that's Indiana.
Hi, it's Matt from Ludovox, and we are at GenCon Day 2 on the Loneshark booth with Mike Stedlinker. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
So here we have the next Kickstarter game that you are going to do, basically, which is Thornwatch, right?
Thornwatch is the first game in the Ironwood Adventures line. After we get Ninth World and Apocrypha out, this will be the next focus of our company. Although this game is really far along, so we're about ready to kickstart it. The game is called Thornwatch. That's named after the main characters in the game, and it is created by us and our friends at Penny Arcade, the comic strip that a lot of people really love, and they made this amazing world for us to play in.
Okay, so what is the story of Thornwatch? What are we trying to do?
We are the Thornwatch. So the Thornwatch are the spirits that protect the Ironwood. The Ironwood's a giant forest that covers the planet. And so there are people and villages all over the Ironwood that are built around these camping spikes which sort of anchor them in place. And frequently people go out in the Ironwood and get into trouble. So when they're in trouble, they tie a knot in a tree, and that summons the Thornwatch to them. And then what we do, as playing the game, is try to resolve whatever problem was necessary to call us. So we have a very cool method of storytelling, which I will happily show you if you'd like.
So is it a co-op game?
It's a co-op game between, you each have a deck of cards and we're all together, but there is one player who is the judge. And the judge has different set of resources and actions, and sometimes feels he's in competition and sometimes not.
So how many players can play this game?
This is a game that requires at least 3 players, and it goes up until about 6 players, one of whom is a judge.
And how much does a typical game last?
Well, this game actually has a variable length. At minimum, it's going to be about 45 minutes, but it can last as long as you want it to last because of there's sort of a choose your own adventure nature of the game that can make it like 4 hours if you want it to be. Okay,
so it is a scenario-based game. And how do you choose the scenario? What do they change? And do they change the goal of the game?
Absolutely. So this thing here, this is a sketch. This is not a final. Microlick drew it. It is what you have is you have a story a start tile called The Singer in the Dark here, right? And it says, do this, here's a map to build, here's the stuff that happens on it, and you go through it. But then again at the back, it says, if the Thornwatch succeed, well, you have some options. And if it says, if the Thornwatch fail, then you have some other options of places to go. If they succeed, you can go right to the end. If you want a nice short game, you can go right to the end and deal with the final problem. But if not, you'd like a diversion, you can go to Signs and Portents if they follow the tracks, or you can rescue the villager, and then that's a totally different one. So this one comes off the top. Now we play Signs and Portents, and that has a different set of options that might occur. We might go through that, and we play that out. Then if we fail, we might go to the Hunted tile where the monsters hunt us. And then finally, after all of that, we might get to Silence the Swamp Choir, which is the finale of this one. And it says you have to fight the giant four-headed turtle that's rampaging through the forest. But if you succeed, then this happens, and if you fail, then this happens.
So it feels like a choose-your-own adventure game with a game system that supports it.
I think so, yeah. I mean, it definitely feels like you're inside a comic book. You know, you don't know exactly how the comic book will end, but you don't know quite where it will go along the way, but you feel like you're right in the heart of a comic book.
So what do we do on a player turn?
Player's turn, well, first we have to determine whose turn it is, okay? So this thing right here is called the momentum track. The momentum track is all the characters have a card that goes on the track. So the blade, let's see, what do we actually have out there? We have the blade, we don't have this guy, and we have the warden, we don't have this guy, right? So we have these guys. So the blade is going first. And on the blade's turn, the character will have a hand of cards, have a hand of 5 cards probably to start. And on the blade's turn, they will be able to move to ready actions by placing them into their readied area, and then to take one action, either one of the things that's listed on the character card or using the cards play something out. So this one's called Lead by Example. It requires 1 Woodwise and 1 Brawn. It could be these 2 cards. We'll have to play them. Or you'll also notice that the cards that have things at the top can also be used for those purposes. So if I wanted to play this as a Brawn, I can do so. So, but this is now fully powered up, and so I can play it by discarding it. It'll say every hero in my space, including me, returns a wound to the deck and draws a card to replace it. And so I can play that. I can play cards that I have actions that are like my basic attack and things like that. The various characters do different things. And then I finish my turn. I discard any cards that are left in my hand, and I draw another hand of 5 cards. Now, if any of those cards are wounds, I give them back to the judge.
Okay, and are the deck for each character?
Yes.
Okay, so we have each character has his own deck with his own abilities, and okay.
The key element of this momentum track is that it doesn't just say who goes in what order. It's dynamic. So if somebody decides to attack the Ebb Wolf, right? What'll happen is, let's say they roll the dice, and these dice have check marks on them that say, this is 1 hit, this is 2 hits, and then there's one that says this is given Ebb to the judge, which I'll explain in a second. But let's say I hit it, and I hit it for 3, right? Well, 3 hits is move this here, 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 right? So now it doesn't get to go for a while. If I manage to hit something that's on the edge, I remove it from the momentum track. So our goal is actually to move them down the track. The cool thing is that we can't make these decisions by ourselves. I can't just say I'm going to do a thing. I have to check with everybody and make sure that what I'm doing is actually going to benefit the group. And so there's a lot of interactivity on everybody's turn.
So what about the judge? What does he do?
The judge has a job. The judge in a lot of these games is, just the curator of the game. But in this case, the judge is actually given resources that they have to spend. So as the judge, I get these Ebb tokens. I would spend them to get more monsters, to avoid damage, all that kind of thing. I'll be given Ebb every time anybody rolls an Ebb symbol on one of the dice, and I can spend that later. And I can use Ebb in the transition between the first scene and the next scene. I could say, I want 2 more Swamp Gliders. I'm going to take 4 points and remove it from the deck.
What about the bosses? Like here we have the Swamp Choir. Do we have 1 boss per scenario?
The bosses tend to be at the end after in the adventure, but they move. You'll note that, for example, the Ebb Wolves only have 1 card, even though there's many of them on the board. And the Swamp Choir has 4 cards even though there's only one of them on the board. And the idea being that this is how many turns the Swamp Choir will take, whereas the Ebb Wolves will only take one turn for all of them. So, and then as you remove the Swamp Choir's heads, it gets less and less capable of doing that kind of damage.
What about the villagers? What do they do in this scenario?
In this particular case, they're needing to be rescued, and if they get moved to the edge, they lose villagers off the board.
So you need to make them act in order to push them.
Make sure that they don't get knocked down all the way.
Okay. And what about the wounds? How do you get them?
The wounds you get. So the judge gives out a lot of wounds. So the Swamp Choir might attack, roll 4 dice, and if it hits, it hands you some wounds. They go on top of your card deck. Anytime you might have to draw a card, you shuffle your card deck, and then you draw that many cards. If you get any wounds, so let's say this is my hand, but I get 2 wounds. I'm going to reach across you here. I get 2 wounds, and I draw them. I actually put them in my hand like this. That they're facing outward, so they're just gumming up my hand, and I need to get rid of them. If I have a healer, he might be able to help, or I just give them back to the judge at the beginning of their turn. You can lose the game a couple of ways. You can either get you cannot meet the objective of it, or you can watch the judge give out every one of their wound cards. If they do that, they win.
Okay, and what are those tiny little cards here?
The little cards here are terrain cards. Sometimes they're face up, sometimes they're face down. Usually they're not a good thing, but sometimes they trigger when you go into the terrain.
Is there anything good in a co-op game?
Well, I mean, there's a few, right? There's every now and then, like the villagers we want to save and so forth. But as a general rule, things are bad.
Okay, is it going to be a very difficult game, or is it going to be, I don't know, doable on the first try?
I think this is going to be one of our lighter, less complex games, even though there's going to be a lot of things that happen in it. I think that the goal is to have something you can just take right off the shelf and play.
Okay, maybe the storytelling also helps having more people interested into it?
I think that there's real value to having people respond to what you do. So we've built in all sorts of triggers on the cards, question prompts that you can use to make your role-playing experience happen. Some people will do it and some people won't.
Okay, when do you plan to kickstart this?
We don't have a plan yet for that. We came to GenCon because we didn't know what people would think of this game. We wanted to make sure people liked it. So far it's been really good, and so that will go into our planning process as to when we release the Kickstarter news. But I think that we'll probably have something to say at PAX.
PAX, okay. And is it very different envisioning and designing a Kickstarter experience?
I think so, yeah. I mean, we've had to be much more hands-on. We build puzzles into all of our Kickstarters. We give people reasons to check back every day. It's hard work.
Thank you very much, Mike, for this overview of Thornwatch. Bye, and see you on Ludovox.
INDIANA, that's Indiana. Ballin' like Reggie Miller, that's Indiana.